The government's chief expert at trial told us that he was now convinced that Lisa was sexually abused, gang raped, and trafficked.
Lisa Montgomery appeared to be a desperate mother, yet she committed one of the most heinous murders in her attempt to steal an unborn baby. Carla Homolka seemed like a devoted wife, but was an accomplice in horrific crimes alongside her husband, including the murder of her own sister.
Carla Homolka served 12 years in prison for manslaughter after a plea deal for testifying against her ex-husband, Paul Bernardo.
From cold-blooded killings to betrayals that shocked the world, these women were responsible for crimes that defy comprehension. In this video, we will uncover the dark secrets behind the most dangerous women who have been imprisoned. If you think you've seen it all, keep watching this video until the end. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos, an American serial killer, became a symbol of human cruelty. Between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos killed 7 men in Florida, claiming self-defense in each instance. She insisted that her victims attempted to assault her while she worked as a prostitute, but prosecutors characterized her as a predator who stalked her targets. Her shocking story was so impactful that it was depicted in the film Monster, for which Charlize Theron won an Oscar. Wuornos was sentenced to death and executed in 2002, but her legacy continues to be a topic of controversy and study.
Do you feel anger or even hatred towards men?
I never hated men, but now I do.
The brutality of her crimes and her justifications left many wondering if she was truly a victim or a cold-blooded killer. Her life in prison was marked by isolation, and until her last day, she maintained that the deaths were acts of self-defense. Was she genuinely a victim of circumstance or one of the most ruthless murderers in history?
And he said I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world.
While Aileen Wuornos is known for acting alone, the next case introduces us to a deadly duo, where their complicity was as chilling as the crimes themselves. Carla Homolka. Carla Homolka is perhaps one of the most chilling examples of a female accomplice in a series of brutal murders. Alongside her husband, Paul Bernardo, Homolka took part in the abduction, rape, and murder of several teenagers in Canada during the 1990s. What makes her case even more disturbing is the fact that one of her victims was her own younger sister, Tammy. Carla managed to strike a deal with prosecutors to reduce her sentence, claiming she was manipulated and abused by her husband. However, later discovered videos revealed that her involvement in the crimes was much more active than she initially admitted.
Ice baby to go? No. Okay, let's see what's up. We have the television and we have Carla drinking and Lori, which is absolutely not drinking.
She served only 12 years in prison, which outraged Canadian public opinion. Today, Carla Homolka lives a relatively quiet life under a different name, but her dark past continues to haunt her. As Homolka fought to clear her name in court, the streets of Whitechapel remind us that there are crimes that, centuries later, still leave us with unanswered questions. Maryanne Nichols. Maryanne Nichols is one of the names most closely associated with the Whitechapel murders, crimes attributed to the infamous Jack the Ripper. She was the first of the so-called canonical victims of the Ripper, and her murder in 1888 marked the beginning of one of the most enduring criminal mysteries in history. The brutal attack on Nichols, who was found with her throat slashed and abdomen opened, unleashed a wave of terror across London. Although Jack the Ripper was never captured, Maryanne Nichols' death remains a key piece in the dark puzzle of serial murders that shook Victorian society. What led Jack to choose her as his first victim? That question remains unanswered to this day. From the shadows of London to the limitless cruelty in the heart of America, the next crime stands out for its chilling nature and tragic outcome. Lisa Montgomery. Lisa Montgomery is another name that resonates due to its brutality. In 2004, Montgomery kidnapped a pregnant woman named Bobby Jo Stinnett, who was 8 months along. Montgomery's cruel plan involved killing Stinnett and then cutting the baby from her womb, attempting to pass it off as her own. Miraculously, the baby survived the attack, but the coldness with which Montgomery executed the crime horrified the entire United States.
You're in a red county, and Missouri is pretty much red. This is a Republican area, and people are not happy with the election results in this area.
So that's a no.
That's a no.
Montgomery was captured, tried, and sentenced to death for her crimes. In 2021, she was executed, becoming the first woman to be executed in the United States in nearly 7 decades. Her story remains one of the most disturbing cases of kidnapping and murder in recent history, and her crime stands out for its level of cruelty and premeditation. Montgomery left an indelible mark with her brutality, but the next killer, with her calculating precision, turned greed into a deadly art. Judy Buenano. Known as the Black Widow, Judy Buenano was a serial killer who poisoned her husband, son, and boyfriend at different times to collect life insurance payouts. For over a decade, Buenano managed to hide her crimes until an autopsy revealed arsenic in her son's body. Buenano's greed and cold calculations led her to death row, where she was executed in 1998. Her case serves as a reminder that crime knows no gender, and the ease with which she manipulated and destroyed lives made her one of the most dangerous killers of her time. While Buenano operated from the shadows, the next killer was pulled into darkness by the influence of her partner, yet her role in the crimes would equally condemn her. Cynthia Kaufman. Cynthia Kaufman, along with her accomplice James Marlowe, was involved in a series of kidnappings, rapes, and murders in 1986. Kaufman was often seen as a woman who succumbed to Marlowe's influence, yet her active role in the crimes leaves no doubt about her guilt. The acts committed by Kaufman and Marlowe were brutal, with their victims enduring horrific tortures before being killed. Kaufman received a death sentence, but her case remains under appeal. In the meantime, she continues to be a notorious figure among female serial killers. The tragic fate of Kaufman's victims brings us to another disturbing case: a mother willing to sacrifice her own children for a twisted love. Diane Downs. Diane Downs shocked the United States when she attempted to murder her 3 children in 1983, shooting them in a desperate bid to gain the affection of a man who did not want kids. One of her children died, while the other 2 survived but suffered severe consequences. Downs was sentenced to life imprisonment, yet her cold, unremorseful demeanor during the trial left everyone astounded. Her story was adapted into a TV movie, but nothing can erase the pain and trauma she inflicted on her own children. While Downs's chilliness astonished all, the next tale is even more chilling: a killer who not only murdered, but did so with a horrifying sense of pride. Angela Simpson. Angela Simpson is infamous for one of the most unsettling crimes in recent history. In 2009, Simpson tortured and killed a disabled man in Phoenix, Arizona. The most disturbing aspect of her crime was the coldness with which she committed it, and later recounted in a televised interview, showing no remorse.
He told on a righteous person years ago, and he told me that.
So what did he do? What did you do to him?
I killed him.
Simpson admitted to planning the murder for several days, and her reasons for the crime were as brutal as the act itself. According to her, her victim deserved to die for being a snitch, and she boasted about enjoying the process. The bluntness of her confession and the savagery of her actions made her one of the most feared women in the United States. Simpson's ruthless honesty leads us to a family tragedy, where fire and poison became the weapons of a desperate mother. Deborah Green. Deborah Green was a physician and mother of 3, but her life took a dark turn in 1995 when she set fire to her house with her children inside, killing 2 of them. Green, who was dealing with mental health issues and a troubled marriage, had previously been accused of poisoning her husband with ricin, but the fire was what led to her life sentence. The case of Deborah Green is particularly unsettling due to her medical background and the fact that she was viewed as a devoted mother before committing the crimes. How someone could transform from a respected professional to committing such a heinous act remains a mystery for many. While Green destroyed her family in a fit of madness, the next killer found a supposed redemption, yet the shadow of her brutal crime wouldn't fade easily. Carla Fay Tucker. Carla Fay Tucker is one of the few women in recent history to be executed in the United States. In 1983, Tucker took part in a gruesome axe murder during a robbery with her accomplice, Daniel Garrett. What drew attention to her case was her apparent religious conversion while on death row. During her years in prison, Tucker embraced Christianity, and many advocates called for clemency based on her transformation. However, her execution in 1998 proceeded, making her the first woman to be executed in Texas since 1863. Her case sparked debates about the death penalty and forgiveness in society. Tucker's failed quest for redemption stands in stark contrast to the unyielding coldness of the next killer, whose crime shocked a community, revealing the darkest corners of the human spirit. Shelly Lynn Hines. Shelly Lynn Hines may not be well known globally, but her case is no less terrifying. Hines was responsible for the murder of a woman whom she kidnapped and tortured alongside her partner. The motive behind the crime was simply theft, but the brutality with which it was carried out shook the community where she lived. Hines's trial exposed chilling details about how the crime was plotted and her utter lack of remorse throughout the proceedings. She received a life sentence, and to this day, she is considered one of the most dangerous women incarcerated in the United States. While Hines's motive was straightforward theft, the next case delves into the dangers of extreme idealism, where radical beliefs led to a deadly crime. Kathy Budin. Kathy Budin was a radical activist, part of the Weather Underground organization, a group that opposed U.S. government policies through sabotage and violence. In 1981, Budin participated in an armed bank robbery in New York, planned to fund revolutionary activities. During the assault, 2 police officers and a security guard were killed, although Budin did not fire any weapons. Her role in planning and executing the crime made her equally accountable under the law, resulting in a 22-year prison sentence. Throughout her imprisonment, Budin became a polarizing figure. While some viewed her as a terrorist involved in a brutal murder, others considered her a victim of her radical ideals. In prison, Budin began engaging in education and advocating for prisoners' rights, transforming from a violent activist to a humanitarian advocate. Her work in prison, where she helped other inmates study and prepare for reintegration, was seen as an attempt at redemption. Despite her rehabilitation efforts, Kathy Budin remains associated with one of the most shocking crimes of the 80s in the United States. After her release in 2003, she continued her work on social justice issues.
Reaction tonight to the death of 1960s radical Kathy Budin, who was infamous for her role in the deadly 1981 Brinks truck robbery in Rockland County. CBS 2's Tony Aiello covered Budin's controversial release from prison in 2003, and tonight has reaction to her death at age 78.
But the shadow of the robbery and the murders still follows her. Her story exemplifies how a life dedicated to political struggle can take a destructive turn, resulting in tragic consequences for everyone involved. Budin's political ideology led to death and destruction, but what follows is a deadly mix of medical charlatanism and unbridled greed. Linda May Hazard. Linda May Hazard was a dangerous and controversial figure in the medical world during the early 20th century. Self-proclaimed as a doctor, Hazard practiced what she called starvation therapy, a risky and dubious method of extreme fasting. Through her clinic in Washington State, she persuaded her patients that prolonged fasting was the answer to various ailments. However, many of her followers were unaware that her approach led to the deaths of dozens. The most notorious case involving Hazard was that of sisters Claire and Dorothea Williamson, 2 wealthy women who died while under her care. Their deaths, along with witness testimonies, revealed that Hazard not only starved her patients but also exploited their assets and properties. This scandal ultimately resulted in her arrest and conviction for involuntary manslaughter in 1912, but not before she left a trail of victims. Linda May Hazard's legacy serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by quacks in the medical field. Behind the guise of a healer, she was responsible for the deaths of vulnerable individuals who placed their trust in her false promises. Her case not only marked a significant moment in the history of alternative medicine, but also prompted stricter regulations on medical practices to protect patients from fraud and abuse. Hazard used her guise as a healer to manipulate her victims, but the next killer opted for deceit to turn a group of teenagers into her accomplices. Pamela Smart. Pamela Smart was a school counselor who, at just 22, became the center of one of the most sensational crimes of the 1990s. In 1990, Smart persuaded her teenage lover, Billy Flynn, and a group of his friends to murder her husband, Greg Smart. Her motive was to avoid a costly and embarrassing divorce that could damage her professional reputation. The murder was brutal and meticulously planned, yet the teenagers made several mistakes that led to their swift arrest. Pamela Smart's trial was a media circus that captivated the entire United States. Her cold and calculating demeanor during the hearings, combined with the treacherous nature of the crime, turned her into a notorious public figure. Despite her youth, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole, a verdict many deemed fitting given the extent of her manipulation over the young people involved. To this day, Pamela Smart maintains her innocence, claiming she never ordered her husband's murder, although the evidence against her remains compelling. Her case continues to be one of the most debated in American criminal history, particularly regarding how the narrative of a manipulative school counselor and her young lover has been portrayed in media, films, and documentaries. The case of Pamela Smart not only exposed the complexities of human relationships, but also sparked a debate about the role of manipulation in notorious crimes, a topic that resonates in the story of the last killer on our list. Tina Marie Smith. Tina Marie Smith, convicted in 1999 for the murder of her husband, orchestrated a crime that raised questions about the boundaries of self-defense and revenge. Smith had endured years in an abusive relationship, but rather than seek legal recourse, she decided to take matters into her own hands. The brutality and precision with which she carried out the murder made her case one of the most talked about of its time. Smith not only killed her husband, but also attempted to disguise the murder as an accident. Investigators discovered she had spent weeks planning every detail, leading prosecutors to argue it was a premeditated act. During the trial, Smith sought to justify her actions by citing the abuse she had suffered, but the evidence against her was overwhelming, resulting in a life sentence. The case of Tina Marie Smith raises challenging questions about the distinction between self-defense and revenge. While many sympathize with her plight, the fact that she plotted the murder instead of seeking a legal solution places her in a morally complex position. Today, her story serves as a cautionary tale about the risks of responding to abuse with premeditated violence, rather than seeking support through legal channels. From the chilling coldness of murder to the extremes of love's madness, these stories of female killers reveal humanity's darkest sides. Are you surprised? Perhaps the most frightening aspect is knowing that these cases could be closer to home than you think. If these stories have moved you and you want to learn more about similar tales, be sure to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos.